So look, if you wanted to play an FPS game in the late 90s and early 2000s, you basically had two choices. Either fast-paced arena shooters like Quake 3 or the slow tactical military games that were just starting to come out. But then out of absolutely nowhere, Raven Software dropped this massive bomb on the gaming world, the OG Soldier of Fortune. And not gonna lie, it's probably one of the most controversial and edgy games ever made. Like when it came out, it literally caused a global panic. It actually got banned in a few places, parents were terrified of this game, and it was this forbidden fruit for kids back in the day. But anyways, if you're new here, I basically spend my spare time looking back at older games, hidden gems, and even disasters to see how they hold up today or if they're better left in the past. No fast cuts, no screams, no memes, just a chill vibe where we look at games from a modern lens. If that's the kind of nostalgia you're into, please stick around and subscribe. So let's take a look back at the absolute bloodbath that's Soldier of Fortune. Okay, let's kick it off with the narrative. And the plot here feels like it was ripped straight out of some cheap VHS action movie from the 80s, and I mean that in the best way possible. You play as a guy named John Mullins. Now here's a crazy part about the game. John Mullins isn't just some generic macho guy that a writer made up. He's an actual real-life dude. The real John F. Mullins is apparently an absolute legend. He was a paratrooper, a medic, and a covert operative for a top-secret group called SOG in the Vietnam War. To be honest, the real guy's life is crazier than the video game. But anyways, Raven actually hired the real John Mullins as a consultant to help make this game. So when you're playing as Mullins, you're essentially playing as a digital version of a real-life badass. So what's the actual game about? Well, the story kicks off when a group of terrorists attack a Russian storage facility and steal 4 nuclear warheads. And then they start selling these nukes to rogue nations, which is obviously a big no-no. The UN gets freaked out, but they can't do anything officially, much like in real life. So they hire an undercover mercenary group known simply as The Shop. The Shop is basically your base of operations. It's hidden underneath an old bookstore in New York. And the guy who runs the shop is Sam Gladstone. Sam's this awesome older dude who used to be a captain in the Vietnam War and did some recon for the CIA. He's like your main handler and gives you missions, hooks you up with guns, and tells you where to go. And working with Mullins is his partner Aaron Hawk Parsons. Hawk's like this weapons expert who goes on missions with you and then yells at you over the radio. So your main target in the game is a mastermind named Sergei Decker. He's basically a comic book villain who wants to take over the world with his private army. He also has this crazy brother Wilhelm Saber Decker who you gotta deal with too.
Damn, Hawk, Saber got away. Copy, look out, something's headed your way.
So the game kinda like takes you all over the planet to stop these guys. You start out fighting gang members in a New York subway. Then you're off to a snowy train in Siberia, a chemical plant in Kosovo, rainy streets of Tokyo, a base in Sudan, and a slaughterhouse in Uganda. There's even a wild mission where you go to Iraq to hunt down a corrupt general and you literally bump into Saddam Hussein. Eventually you track Sergei to this massive castle in Germany for the final showdown. So anyways, look, the story isn't exactly Shakespeare or something. It's incredibly cheesy, the voice acting is B-movie quality, and the writing is pretty thin at best. But you know what? It somehow just works perfectly. It gives you just enough reason to fly around the globe and shoot bad guys in the face. I mean, what more do you want, right? It knows exactly what kind of action game it wants to be, and it delivers that testosterone-fueled vibe right from the start. Right, let's talk about the visuals and the art style. So like the very first thing you're gonna notice is that it's really old. It was built on the id Tech 2 engine, which is basically a modified version of the Quake 2 engine. The character models have a very low polygon count. Everyone looks like a chunky block of wood, and the faces are just flat textures stretched over square heads. The levels themselves look okay, but the textures can get super muddy when you get up close. But look, honestly, nobody played this game to look at pretty trees or high-res walls. You played it for one specific reason, the Ghoul engine. Raven built this Ghoul system specifically to render damage, and it completely changed the way violence was shown in video games. Before it came out, if you shot a bad guy in any other shooter, they would do a generic animation and fall over. It was pretty boring. But this Ghoul changed all of that by dividing every enemy body into 26 different parts. Depending on where you shoot someone, they react in different ways. And not gonna lie, it's incredibly brutal. Like if you shoot a guy in the knee, he'll actually drop his gun and try to hop away while limping. And if you shoot him in the foot, he dances around grabbing his toes. Or if you shoot him in the neck, he makes this horrible gurgling sound. The dismemberment is actually insane for its time. You can even shoot the flesh off their faces to reveal the skeleton underneath. Honestly, it's easy to see why the Canadian government freaked out and banned it. They literally put out a statement saying the game depicted the agony and suffering of victims burning to death, specifically pointing out the flamethrower animations where enemies flail around and grasp at their wounds. Sure, looking back at it now, the whole violence has a slightly cartoony feel to it. But back in 2000, it was the most realistic gore anyone had ever seen. So what about gameplay? Well, it's a first-person action shooter that's all about running and gunning. And since it runs on the Quake 2 engine, Mullins moves really fast. It has this fast pacing of a 90s shooter like Doom, but it throws in a bunch of realistic elements to ground the experience. For example, unlike Quake, you actually have to reload your weapons and you can only carry a limited amount of gear. And the game wants you to approach combat in different ways. Like if you run into a room with your guns blazing, the enemy AI will react aggressively. But if you pull out your knife or a suppressed gun, you can actually try to sneak around and take them out quietly. But who are we kidding, the stealth in this game is total bullshit. It's so broken, like the enemies have superpowers or something. If you make even a tiny bit of noise, or if someone sees a dead body for a split second, the alarm goes off instantly. And once that alarm sounds, every single guard in the zip code knows exactly where you are. And the enemy AI isn't super smart either. They tend to spawn in the exact same spot every time you play. Once you learn a level, you can just pre-aim around a corner and blow their brains out before they even finish their spawning animation. There are also these moments where you will catch a bad guy peeing on a wall while laughing to himself, and the game never explains why that's happening, but it's pretty funny, I'll admit.
What the hell's going on here?
For me, the best part of the gameplay without a doubt are the weapons. The arsenal in this game is actually decent. You start with a combat knife which you can slash or throw directly into someone's skull. For your sidearms, you have the Black Panther handgun and a magnum which basically hits like a truck and blows heads clean off. Then you have the shotgun. Oh my god, the Berserker combat shotgun is an absolute masterpiece. It's one of the most punchy and satisfying shotguns ever in a video game. When you shoot an enemy point blank with this thing, the ghoul engine just deletes him. And for automatic weapons, you have the Raptor and the Bulldog suppressed for when you want to pretend the stealth actually works. You also have an Eagle Eye sniper rifle for long-range headshots. Later in the game, you get the heavy stuff, like a machine gun or the slug thrower. For explosives, you get C4 flashbangs, frags, and a rocket launcher to clear out whole rooms. And then there are the crazy experimental weapons like the flame gun. Finally, you get this weird sci-fi gun called the microwave pulse emitter. If you shoot someone with this microwave gun, they basically cook from inside and explode in a massive shower of gore. It's ridiculous, but so much fun. The gunplay carries the whole game, to be honest. However, the whole gameplay loop can get a tad bit repetitive. You're mostly just running down corridors, killing people over and over, and there isn't a lot of variety. Plus, the boss fights are incredibly annoying because they essentially act as giant bullet sponges. But overall, shooting bad guys in this game is an absolute blast. So if you just play through the main story normally, it will take you about 7 hours. If you're a completionist who wants to poke around and find all the secrets, you're looking at around 8.5 hours. Honestly, 7 to 8 hours is like the perfect length for this kind of game. It ends right before you start getting really bored of the mindless violence. It does what it needs to do and gets out of the way. But here's where things get weird. The difficulty settings here are kinda bizarre. Like, you know how normally turning up the difficulty just means the enemies have more health or do more damage? But here the difficulty actually dictates how many times you're allowed to save your game. Yep, you heard that right. So the game asks if you want to save at the start of a level, but after that you're restricted. If you play on the effortless difficulty, you get unlimited saves just like in a modern game. If you bump it up to challenging, the game only gives you 2 saves for the entire level. And then there's the highest difficulty, which is literally called unfair. On unfair you get 0 saves. If you die right at the end of a level, you start the whole thing over. But it gets so much worse. On unfair, if you trigger an alarm and it hits its limit, the game will start infinitely spawning enemies. It never stops. You will literally have a million guys running at you while a siren blares in your ears. And the boss fights on Unfair are a complete joke because the boss will raise the alarm and summon endless bots to shoot you. It's not fun, it's just frustrating and quite frankly unfair. Thankfully, the devs were smart enough to include a custom difficulty. This is honestly the best feature in the game. You can go into settings and tweak everything. It's pretty cool you could do that. Alright, it's time for the final verdict. So yeah, the graphics look ancient and the story is kinda dumb, but the actual gameplay loop is still top notch. The Ghoul engine is still a technical marvel. It's honestly pathetic that some modern video games with hundreds of millions of dollars in budget can't make an enemy react to getting shot as well as this game did 26 years ago. Anyways, there are also sequels like Soldier of Fortune 2 Double Helix, which was okay, but they made it way too slow and tactical. And let's not even talk about Soldier of Fortune Payback, which was just pure garbage. But this first game, it's pretty special.